be distracting as shit the whole. It's like
It's gonna be hot as hell too.
I hope this takes hours.
All right, guys, welcome back to the holiday episode. Christmas episode of Uncivilized Investigations. We each have a couple cases to present tonight that all have to do with the Christmas season, Christmas time, Christmas.
And we figured, why not throw one out Christmas Day? We're still going to do one weekly, but this is just another one added in.
So Dave's going to take it off with the
Lawson Family Murders. This one has been covered numerous times, probably overdone, and I added to the pile. But in Germantown, North Carolina, Charles Davis Lawson, known as Charlie, had been a tenant farmer for years until he saved up enough money to buy his own tobacco farm in 1927. 2 years later, a couple days before Christmas, Charlie and his family, which was a wife and 7 children, went into town for a shopping spree on new clothing and gifts, and then had their portrait taken, which at the time for a working class family would have been unusual, but owning his own tobacco farm, he was considered a well-to-do farmer. And then on the afternoon of Christmas Day, Charlie had sent his oldest son out to do some errands away from the farm, and while his oldest son was gone, he had begun a killing spree. First, Charlie was waiting outside of his barn for his daughters to pass by while they were on their way to a relative's house. He waited them out until they came into range where he was able to mow them down with a shotgun. Then after shooting them, he had made sure they were dead by bludgeoning them to death and then hiding their bodies in the barn.
With all the tobacco.
Yeah. After this, he had made his way back to the house where his wife Fanny was waiting on the porch. And he shot her at close range with the same shotgun. And while doing so, he heard screams inside from his daughter Marie, as well as 2 of his young sons. The daughter screamed, the 2 boys were scurrying, trying to find somewhere to hide. Charlie then proceeded into the house, killed Marie as well as both the boys after finding where they were hidden. And his final victim was the baby, which he beat to death before leaving the house.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. After this, Charlie retreated into the woods, and several hours later ended up taking his own life as well. People had already started learning about the murders after the oldest son returned to the family home, and inside found the carnage that awaited. And as they were gathering, they heard the shotgun go off, which was Charlie taking his own life.
Maybe he's here with us now.
Maybe we shouldn't be talking about him. In the crowd was a police officer, and then upon hearing the shot, went towards it, and he found Charlie's body near a tree with a note that he had left behind that was supposedly written to his parents.
Were his parents still alive?
I think so.
Oh, okay. That'd be weird if they weren't.
Yeah, pretty weird. I mean, he would have kept it with him if he was taken it to the afterlife.
That's true.
What was odd, though, is around the tree he was found, there was almost like a path beaten in the ground, like he was pacing around it, which they suspect he was just pacing up until he ended up taking his life. After the murders, the Lawson family was laid to rest in a private family graveyard. And then Charlie's brother opened the house as a museum, tourist attraction, and were giving tours to people.
That's kind of dark. Although I could see my brother doing that. I get murdered, he shows it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
The house was left untouched, including the blood and everything hadn't been cleaned up. There was even a cake that Fanny had baked earlier that day that they put on display, and tourists were like picking raisins and stuff off of it and taking it with them.
Oh, taking them, not eating them.
Souvenir. His brother finally had a glass case that he put the cake in to protect it. But then after I was there for a few years, and then the cake was finally removed. As of now, the house is no longer standing, and the property it was on is now private, and the current landowner does not allow any public access, even permitted access. Supposedly, the lumber that was salvaged was used from the original house and repurposed to build a covered bridge over a nearby creek.
So there's a haunted bridge near a creek, on a creek.
Also not open to the public.
Oh.
There is a museum to honor the family, and that's located on the second floor of Madison Dry Goods Store in Madison, North Carolina. And the significance is that is the same building that was once a funeral home and was where the family had been embalmed before their burial. The museum will display artifacts that were recovered, photos, and documents that are related to the event. Some of the theories behind why the murders had taken place is, first one is Charlie had suffered a head injury that some of his family believed could have affected his mental state. It was kind of debunked, so to speak, after the autopsy was done at Johns Hopkins. They examined his brain and found nothing abnormal that would agree that him having mental issues. And the other theory that I find kind of loose is Charlie had impregnated his daughter Marie.
Do we have ages of the family?
The oldest son, I believe, was 17.
Okay. We won't delve
No,
any
the
deeper.
oldest was 19, I believe.
We won't delve any deeper into how old Marie was.
Well, the reason I don't believe much about the impregnated his daughter is that didn't become a theory until 1990, when a surviving relative made a mention that her mom had remembered a conversation.
So it's whispered down the lane?
It was 70 years out or 60 years after it happened that her mom was like, oh, I remember them talking about this.
Yeah.
And then it probably started with he might have disciplined her, and then it turned into, oh no, he was having a relationship with her. But yeah, that was the Lawson Family Murders. I kind of went pretty quick through it once I started researching, because I realized that was...
Were there any copies of the note?
No.
No.
But I didn't invest too much into it once I realized how much it had already been covered. I should have just picked another one instead of sticking with that one, but here we are.
So what do you think happened?
I mean, I think
he just snapped?
I think it could have been part of a mental state, but figure 1929, being a tobacco farmer in North Carolina, raising 7 children, and they did have an 8th child they lost early on, but they passed years before even they had their own tobacco farm. I mean, being a parent around the holidays, I don't care if 1929 or 2025, that's stressful for anybody.
So, just pulled this up real quick. While no formal suicide note was found, a popular hymn verse was written down. Not now, but in the coming years, it will be a better land. We'll read the mourning of our tears, and then sometimes we'll understand. And that is what is also inscribed on their shared headstone. So that's, that's a little interesting. That's also from Wikipedia, so take it for what it's worth.
Yep, take that with a grain of salt.
See, this one says he was found with 2 incomplete notes.
The one I was researching from was one note that was written to his parents.
One said nobody to blame but, and the other said troubles can cause. It's claimed he left letters to his parents, but there were no copies of those letters. So yeah, who knows? It doesn't sound... They didn't keep very good criminal documents back in the day either.
Well, I think another issue, I kind of why I lost interest in it early on is being how much it's been spoken about. I think you take a collaboration of everybody's and they're like, oh, this makes more sense, so you lose other details.
All right, so we're going to move on to what has been called one of the biggest Christmas mysteries in America ever. The Sodder family. So December 24th, 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia. George Sodder, he was born in Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895 under the name of Giorgio Sadu. Him and his brother migrated to the USA in 1908, but his older brother returned as soon as they had cleared customs at Ellis Island because he decided he missed his home far too much to stay in the United States.
Talk about leaving him high and dry.
Yeah, right? He was here by himself. I think it said he was like 17 or 18 when they came over, too. So he was a kid alone.
1895, USA, 1917.
17, yeah. He started work for the Pennsylvania Railroads, carrying water and supplies to workers. After that, he became a driver in Smithers, West Virginia. He drove, like, dump trucks and stuff. He hauled stone.
Oh.
After a couple of years of that, he actually started his own trucking company, where his first jobs were transporting fill dirt to construction sites. And then after that, he moved on to transporting coal. So he built himself a little empire. He had employees, he had multiple trucks.
Well, that in West Virginia, transporting coal, I mean, he wasn't short of work by any means.
Nope. So further in, you'll see, it seems like he was doing pretty good for himself.
I'd say.
While he was working in Smithers, he met Jenny Caprini. Cipriani. Sorry.
Grew up in an Italian household. You know how to say those names.
Yeah, okay. So, Cipriani, who was also an immigrant from Italy, and she was a storekeeper's daughter. So they got to know each other. He worked in Smithers for a while. They hit it off pretty well, and shortly thereafter, she became George's wife. They settled nearby Fayetteville, which had a large population of Italian immigrants, in a 2-story timber frame house 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers, but 2 miles in the correct measurements, north of town. His hauling business did very well, and in 1923 the couple had their first of 10 children.
Jesus.
And their last 20 years later they had in 1943. So they were averaging about a kid every 2 years.
No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So the children were John, who was 23. He still lived at home.
Was this the ages of them in 1943?
Yes, this is yeah. So at the time, John was 23. He was still living at home. Joe was serving in the military. I believe he was 19. It was the end of World War II, so he was not at home for this. Marion was 17, George Jr. was 16, Maurice was 14, Martha was 12, Louis was 9, Jenny was 8, and the youngest was a toddler, Sylvia. She was only 2 years old.
It's kind of funny because they had all those kids in that time, but he waited till the middle to have a junior.
Yeah.
You would have thought his first one would have been a junior.
Yeah, I thought that too.
They just kept swinging at it, going, I want.
I've also read that Joe was actually home from the military, but he was going to college. But either way, he wasn't home for any of these events. Yeah, right now you should be thinking that I only listed 9 kids, and you were correct. And for the life of me, I couldn't find the name of the 10th child, which is insane because this case has been covered and recovered and uncovered, and but...
I mean, you have 10.
Yeah.
We get it.
Maybe it was another junior.
Junior.
One thing about George that a lot of people didn't like at the time was he was a very strong anti-fascist, and he had very strong views about Italy, and he had a very, very strong opposition to the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, which was not a very popular view among Italian immigrants at that time. And he was very outspoken. He held meetings and stuff.
Oh, wow.
He was very anti-fascist, which, good for him.
Yeah.
But it didn't make him a well-liked person in his Italian immigrant town. In October of 1945, a couple weeks before this happened, a life insurance salesman was trying to sell George life insurance, and he wanted him to take life insurance out on his wife and kids. And George pretty much told him, like, go pound sand. Because back then, life insurance wasn't really a big...
Well, that and the monthly premium of it, he's paying it for 11 people. He wouldn't have anything left.
He wouldn't be doing that well anymore.
At that point, you take one out just to cover the life insurance.
But as this life insurance salesman was an Italian immigrant, and as he left, he warned George that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed. George attested that to the fact of the comments he had been making about Mussolini. It was just, he took it as an empty threat. It wasn't.
Okay.
I thought that was a very tactful way to sell life insurance. Like, you better take out life insurance because I'm going to burn your house down.
Yeah, it's one way to, yeah.
The next week, George bought Jenny a new electric stove, and like most house projects go, that ended up with having to have the whole house rewired because the wiring couldn't handle the new electric stove.
Yeah, I can relate.
Because back in those days, electric stoves were like buying Porsches. That was cool. That was
and most houses weren't fit for wiring up an electric stove either.
But since George had the money and the time, he actually had the work done by a licensed electrician and then had the electric company come out and certify that the job had been done correctly.
Wonder why he would have gone through to do all of that.
That's going to play an important part coming up. So just bear in mind, licensed electrician did the work, and the electric company came out and certified that everything was good. A week after that, a man showed up at his house looking for work, and George didn't really have anything for him to do because he had 10 kids. They were pretty much taking care of the property. But this guy was asking if he could like wash his windows, mow the grass, that kind of thing. And he kept walking around the house while they were talking.
It's like a day labor type of thing.
Yeah. And when they got out back, the worker informed him that that pair of fuse boxes there is going to cause a fire someday. And then the guy left. So that's 2 threats of a fire in 3 weeks' time.
By one person who would benefit, well, I wouldn't say benefit, but didn't speak well of him, and then a random guy looking for work. That is pretty suspicious.
Yep. And then to add to the mystery, there's 2 weeks until Christmas at this point, and George's 2 older sons let their dad know that they'd noticed a strange car parked along the main highway through town, and it really seemed like the people in the car who they couldn't identify were watching the younger Sodder children as they returned from school. Because in those days, I'm pretty sure they were walking home from school, so this car would like sit there every day and watch them.
Well, that and people didn't have cars like we do now that...
No, which that actually plays into a part later down the road too. So now let's move on to Christmas Eve. As was a typical of families during that era, the Sodders spent Christmas Eve together as a family. You know, they weren't, I got to go to a friend's house, we got to go to Aunt Martha's house. They were, all 9 of them were in the house, or 8, depending on how you count. We're all in the house together. And around 10 p.m., Jenny told the children that since it was a holiday, they could stay up a little later as long as the 2 oldest boys who were still awake, which was Maurice and Louis, remembered to put the cows in and feed the chickens before going to bed. That was her only stipulation. You can stay up late, but before you go to bed, Maurice and Louis, you got to put the cows and feed the chickens, because George, John, and George Jr. were already asleep because they'd spent the day working with their dad, so they were beat. So,
maybe you already answered. Was their home like a farm, or?
It was a 2-story stick-built house. Okay. I'm assuming they had some property.
Okay.
They had cows and chickens, apparly.
Yeah, that's what made me ask that.
It was your typical 1940s farm family.
In West Virginia, very... hell, those are mountain cows.
Jenny then took the toddler Sylvia upstairs, and they went to bed together. Bear in mind, George was already in bed.
Yep.
At 12:30 a.m. on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1945, their telephone rang, and Jenny was woken up and went downstairs to answer it. You got to remember, this is for you younger folk. This is back when each house had one phone that was connected to the wall, usually in the kitchen. Mine was in the kitchen.
And in 43, that was probably the thing you hold on the ear and the receiver for your mouth.
So she went downstairs to answer it, and the caller was an unknown woman asking for a name that she was not familiar with. And then the sound of laughter and clinking glasses in the background. Jenny informed her that she was pretty sure she had the wrong number, and Jenny hung up. And one thing she told the cops is that she really thought the caller had a really weird laugh.
I'm just curious. I could be incorrect in thinking this, but 1943, how common were phones in houses?
I think it was the party line type thing where, like, if you were on the phone with your neighbor and I was the neighbor in between, I could pick up and listen to what you were saying.
Okay.
It was one line, and you had to yell at people to get off the line.
I'm just thinking, like, they probably didn't have 10-digit phone numbers. Because those towns, I remember at some point, towns were like...
I think back then it was, hello, operator.
You had the operator doing the switchboards.
Yeah, yep. Because that will... Also, comes the operator.
I'm just trying to think timeline of what type of phone they're using.
It was. I'm thinking
the switchboard.
The videos of the lady, like
the operator plugging stuff in and switching them around. Okay.
So since she was downstairs, she decided to check on the kids and noticed that the lights were still on downstairs and the curtains were not drawn, which is two things that the children always did when they stayed up later than their parents. They always turned off the lights and closed the curtains. Marion was asleep on the living room couch, who was one of the ones that was supposed to go out and do the
cows and the chickens.
The cows and the chickens. So one of the older sons. Keep in mind where the older sons are versus where the kids are. The kids went to bed in the attic.
That was probably not unusual.
The kids slept in the attic, yes.
And Marion, he was on the living room couch.
Yep. So Jenny assumed that the other children who had stayed up later had returned to the attic where they slept. She closed the curtains, turned out the lights, and returned to bed. Now, I just want to throw a note in. Nobody actually verified that the kids were in the attic.
Yeah, because she went downstairs to check on them. She never
nobody
went up.
Nobody ever verified that the kids were asleep upstairs, and that's going to play a very important part later. At 1 a.m., Jenny woke up again because she heard something really loud hit the roof and then rolling. But then she didn't hear anything else and assumed that a bird or an owl or something had landed on the roof or something and went back to bed. At 1:30 a.m., she woke again smelling smoke, and she found that the room George used for his office was on fire around the telephone line and the fuse box, and she quickly woke George up, and he woke up his older children. I'm assuming his older children maybe had their own rooms on the second floor, and then there were stairs up to the attic where the kids slept. That's kind of the vibe I got from what I read.
Just kind of putting this together in my head. If she went downstairs to answer the phone, so their bedroom was likely on the second floor.
On the second floor, yep.
So the older children probably on the second floor as well.
Had their own rooms, and then all the younger kids slept in the attic in one, like, communal room. That's the vibe I got from
I'm just trying to put it together in my head how it's...
So George, Jenny, Marion, who was 17, Sylvia, who was 2, the toddler, who went to bed in the parents' room.
Yep, that makes sense.
John, who was 23, and George Jr., who was 16, all escaped the burning house. So the 3 oldest and the toddler who was in the room with her mom.
Yep.
The younger children in the attic had not been able to get out. George Jr. tried to reach them, but the stairway was already on fire. I'm assuming the attic steps were already on fire.
Were they actual steps, or was it like a ladder?
It said he yelled up the stairway, so I'm assuming...
So probably like a narrow...
Like, I know my grandmother's house, the steps to the attic are still old wooden... circle...
So not steps like to an attic today where it's the pull down?
No, it was stairs, yep. They may have even been like a third floor, like the old homes used to have. Like
probably just
floor,
a tall peak.
Yeah, yep. Now, John, in his first police interview after the fire, said he went up to the attic to alert his brothers and sisters sleeping there. But he later changed his story to say that he only yelled up the steps and never actually physically saw them. He just yelled up the steps because of how hot it was getting. Hey, guys, wake up. We got, you know what I mean? Which, I mean, he was only...
Well, he was what,
He 17? Was 23.
23. Well, I mean, he could have been...
He wasn't...
close to his parents as well when he gave his first interview, and then not with his parents gave the actual... You know, I mean, parents.
But I don't think he did anything wrong by just yelling malicious. Up the steps. Yeah. George then ran... So George liked doing his housework. He had a ladder that he kept leaning against the side of the house at all times. Mm-hmm. In his interviews, he said that ladder never moved. It was always there. But when they went to get the ladder, they couldn't find it. It wasn't where it always was. It was gone.
And if it's going to reach all the way up to the top, it's not like it's a
No, and
ladder,
it's not like the little kids would have moved it, playing with it.
Yeah.
They eventually found the ladder. This will come up later, but they found the ladder 75 feet away down an embankment.
Huh.
Almost like somebody may have like picked it up and
carried it away.
Yep. He tried to climb up the wall of the house and broke open the attic window, but he severely lacerated his arm to the point where he couldn't climb anymore because the blood was so slippery.
Oh.
He ended up needing to go to the hospital after this and get stitches and whatnot. So then he had the bright idea of he went to his work trucks. He had big dump trucks. Mm-hmm. Both of them, George drove one the day prior, and John, the oldest, drove the other the day prior. They both ran perfectly fine. When they went to start them, the engines wouldn't turn over. couldn't move his trucks. Now, in a later interview, he said it's a possibility that with as cold as it was...
I was just thinking...
They were diesel. But he also said with as cold as it was, and these are the old trucks, he said there's a chance they flooded them. Because they were in, such a panic to start them. So they couldn't do that. They tried to use the rain barrel that they had under the downspout for water, and it was frozen solid, which that's not malicious, that's just winter. So yeah, both trucks don't work. Ladder's gone.
Water's frozen.
Water's frozen. And their phone didn't work. I don't know where this came into play, but...
Well, originally they said the fire was the fuse box on the phone.
At the phone line, yeah. Their phone wouldn't work.
That could have been why.
So Marion ran to a neighbor's house to call the department. And a neighbor who saw the blaze drove into town and tried to make a call from a nearby tavern. But again, the operator wouldn't answer. That's exactly what it said in the report. The operator never answered the phone.
Which is weird.
Now, you got to remember, too, they live 2 miles from town. If this neighbor drove into town, that's 5-10 minutes there.
Yeah, because it's not like a car today. We're doing 80 mile an hour.
Exactly. So the neighbor that went
But the operator was sending calls at an hour prior to all of this. Yep. Or 2 hours prior to all of this.
So something was up with the phone lines.
Huh.
The neighbor drove into town and tracked down Fire Chief F.J. Morris, who initiated Fayetteville phone tree system, which means that one firefighter would phone another, who would phone another, who would phone another. It was a phone chain of, hey, we have a fire.
Like a bucket brigade of telling who's...
Yes.
Okay.
Because this is before cell phones and pagers and...
Yeah. I mean, this is probably the same time when they have the alarms that were actually to alert fire department members of the fire department.
Now, here's the kicker, and as a firefighter, this blew my mind. The fire department was only 2.5 miles away from the house, but the fire crew didn't arrive until 8 a.m. So this is happening at around 1:30, 2 o'clock. So
7 hours. 7 hours.
Yep. By the time they got there, the house had pretty much turned to rubble. There wasn't anything left to save.
Was there ever a reason why it took such a delayed response?
Yeah, and it's another thing that blows my mind. In a later interview, Chief J. Morris stated that the fire department was already undermanned due to World War II, and they relied on voluntary firefighters, and that the already slow response was further hampered by his inability to drive the fire truck, requiring that he had to wait until someone who could drive showed up.
So he was drinking at a holiday party.
Or he didn't know how to drive the truck. That literally, like, I was like, what kind of fire chief can't drive the fire truck? I literally said WTF out loud when I read that part of the report. I'm like...
But in the 40s, it couldn't have been much different than driving it. Unless the fire chief was unable to drive a vehicle to begin with.
I don't... For some reason, I didn't see any pictures of him, but I'm picturing like a very large man who can't even get in a fire truck. I don't know why, yeah.
Huh.
One of the firefighters was actually a brother of Jenny, because remember, she grew up in Smithers.
Yep.
And he said all they could basically do was sift through the ashes and dampen down the heat.
Well, yeah, they got there 7 hours after.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything left to save at this point. So now picture the Sodder family. They're standing there. Their house is on fire. They're assuming their children are still upstairs.
With no way of getting to them.
And they wait 7 hours for the fire company to show up. They pretty much are just watching their children.
I mean, I know my response. We just can't talk about that out loud.
Yeah. Around 10 a.m., Chief Morris told the Sodders that they had not found any bones, as might have been expected if the other children had been in the house as it burned. However, the investigation seemed to be pretty short and sweet. It was pretty much, from the sounds of it, they just walked through and went, yeah, yep, we don't see anybody.
There was probably a fire.
Yeah. But Morris then stated that he believed that the 5 children that were unaccounted for had died in the fire and suggested it had been hot enough to burn their bodies entirely.
There's no way.
A state police fire inspector combed the rubble and attributed the fire to faulty wiring.
Did they state whether it was the stove or other wiring in the house?
Just faulty wiring. But the electricians had rewired the entire house, and the electric company had just inspected it weeks prior.
Oh, see, my understanding of that was they only inspected the stove.
He had them inspect the whole house. So here's the fun part, and I don't know if they did things different in the 1940s or what, but the local coroner asked for an inquest, and the inquest concluded that the fire was an accident caused by faulty wiring. Among the jurors was the guy who had threatened to burn down George's house. Not threatened to, but told him his house was going to burn down because of his anti-Mussolini rhetoric.
Why was he allowed to be?
Never stated,
Okay.
but he was on the list of jurors.
Because that seemed like quite a conflict.
Yeah. And this blew my mind. So this was on Christmas. So this was December 25th. By December 30th, all the death certificates for the 5 children were issued. 4 days later, death certificates.
Did they ever find any of the remains of the children?
Kinda, but not really, no. We're getting there.
Okay.
They held a funeral on July 2nd. George and Jenny did not attend because they were too grief-stricken and they didn't necessarily believe that their kids were dead. Their older children did. George disputed that the fire department's finding that an electrical fault had caused the fire, as he had just recently had the house rewired and inspected. Him and his family suspected arson, and then that led to theories that the children had been taken by the Sicilian mafia in retaliation of George's outspoken criticism of Benito Mussolini and the fascist government.
Was the mafia prevalent in that area?
I would assume if it was a town of Italian immigrants, probably.
Okay.
Not one to judge, but in those days, if you were Italian, you were involved.
Yeah, but most of the time, in at least my knowledge of it, mafia didn't really go after their own for extortion or anything like that. They would go after other people affiliated with like a different group.
But he was speaking out against their president.
So he could have been the outcast. Okay.
Which
he was the outcast.
Yes,
of the
from all intents and purposes, he was an outcast and an immigrant.
Okay.
And apparently he had been warned before about, like, cool your jets.
And for the fact of being multiple mentions of his house catching fire.
Yep. I'm picturing one of the guys from one of the mafia movies like, yo, your house is going to burn down. But that leads us into the questions.
A lot of them.
Yes. Where were the children's bodies? Some remains should have been expected to be found. Like something.
Yeah. Well, you already have it written, but yeah.
The whole theory, and I actually went back and got statistics from the 1940s, because I do know from being a firefighter that today's houses burn hotter and quicker than they did.
Well, there's a difference of the construction of houses today, too.
So, in the 1940s, professional crematoriums, and actually today, they use temperatures of 1400 to 2100 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 3 hours to reduce bodies to ash. And even after that, there's still bone fragments.
Yes.
That they
usually
put through
survive.
They put through a cremulator, which I thought was a really cool word. Cremulator.
Something that Dunkin' Donuts should get.
Yeah.
Well, usually teeth survive the cremation.
Yep. And then they grind them up in a cremulator. Just say it. Say cremulator.
Cremulator.
It's fun.
It's all right. I'll say that tomorrow morning. I'm making my coffee. And the cremulator.
So a stick house built in the 1940s has a average fire temp of 1100 to 1500 degrees, or for all you weirdos overseas, 600 to 800 degrees Celsius.
Oh, we're dealing with people who use made-up increments.
I never really understood how that works, but I'm sorry, that was in today's building. That was today's built stick house. In the 1940s, the average burn temp was closer to 800 to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, or 425 degrees to 650 degrees Celsius. So if a crematorium averages 1600 to 2000 degrees for at least 3 hours, after which there are still bone fragments to put through a cremulator.
You just wanted to say it again.
I did. There's no way that a house fire would be hot enough to completely burn bodies. Also, there's a large difference between a house fire and a crematorium. The crematorium is a constant concentrated heat in one area, whereas a fire is chaotic with wind gusts and it flows and ebbs and changes temperature constantly.
Well, figure the same like a forge for steel.
Yeah.
There could be a steel hand railing on that stairway. This house burns down. That hand railing is going to be charred, but it's going to be intact.
Yep, exactly.
But a forge, you need to have it in a contained area where it's concentrating the heat onto it.
Exactly. So that whole theory to me...
There should have been remains.
Yeah.
It should have been charred bodies, honestly, not even down to the skeletons.
Another big question is the surviving family members, and we're saying surviving because that's how they're called in the reports, But if it was an electrical problem that caused the fire, the family's Christmas lights and house lights remained on through the fire's early stages. Like, that's how they got out. They could see to get out because the lights in the house were on. So if the electrical system burned out at the fuse box, their lights wouldn't have been on.
It should. No, not necessarily, because your fuse could blow, but that's only that circuit. Figure if one of these lights, the circuit goes...
Yeah, but if your fuse box is on fire...
Glass fuses, though.
So that was one of the... Another one is, why had the ladder gone missing from the house? And it was located at the bottom of an embankment 75 feet away. Who had moved it? None of the surviving older children said that they had done anything with it. George said it was at the house the last time he saw it, and it was deemed that the other children were the ones that were missing were
like
too
if they
small
had
to move
escaped, why would they have brought the ladder with them?
Well, even if they were... My thought was, hey, maybe they were playing with it. They're kids. They're outside on a farm. Maybe they... But the report I read said that it was a heavy-ass ladder. It wasn't
Well, it was probably a solid wooden ladder of... I'm assuming 3-story height if it could have... If the event that it could have reached the 3rd floor, that's at least a 25-foot ladder.
So, onto the telephone. The telephone repairman came out and told the Sodders that the house's phone line had not been burned through in the fire, as they had originally thought, but it was cut by somebody at the pole, which means somebody had to be willing to climb 14 feet up in the pole and then reach 2 feet away from the pole in order to cut it.
It'd be really handy if you had a tall ladder to do that with.
Well, now here's a really fun twist. I could find no other mentions of this, but this is in the report. A man who neighbors had seen stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft and claimed he had been the one who cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire. But no record identifying the suspect exists, and why he would have been one to cut any utility lines to the Sodder house while stealing a block and tackle has never been explained. One theory... In another report I read, and I forgot to put it in here, he claimed he saw the fire and thought it was being caused by electricity, so he cut the electrical line. Which I didn't think you could just cut an electrical line. Like, I thought that would end up with you fried like a squirrel in the middle of the road.
I mean, I don't... Again...
In those days, maybe.
Neither one of us are electrical engineers, so what's to say that we wouldn't have thought that?
But, I
mean, how many times do you have something that, like a drill or something catches fire? Oh, shit, unplug it.
If I saw somebody's house if I was at somebody's house stealing a block and tackle and their house was on fire, I wouldn't be trying to shimmy up a telephone pole. I'd be like knocking the door down like, hey guys, your house is on fire.
Then again, if I was there to steal it, why would I be offering assistance either?
At that point, I think, I don't know. I guess different mindsets.
If he, in this theory, if he was using it to save the family, then would it be considered theft of the block and tackle?
I have no idea. That was just one of those weird... I told you this one had a lot of twists and turns. That's one of the really weird turns. Here's another turn. One of the questions is, what hit the roof at 1 a.m. on December 25th? A bus driver that had passed through Fayetteville late Christmas Eve said he had seen people throwing balls of fire at the house, which would tie into Jenny's memory of something hitting the house and rolling. A few months later, when the snow melted, Sylvia found a small, hard, dark green rubber ball-like object in the bushes nearby. George said it looked like a pineapple bomb, hand grenade, or some other incendiary device used in combat. The family later claimed that, contrary to the fire marshal's conclusion, the fire had started on the roof, although by then there was no way to prove it because there was no roof.
So why wouldn't the bus driver tell anybody that?
No idea.
And what bus driver... Okay. What bus driver is driving around at 1 in the morning?
I don't think so. I'm thinking like Greyhound bus. They do run late runs. Like going from state to state.
Yeah.
At first I was like, school bus in the middle of the night.
I wasn't even thinking school. I'm just thinking bus in general, Christmas Day at 1 in the morning. But yeah, if you're traveling state to city to city, state to state.
Yep.
And why not tell somebody?
Then witnesses came forward and claimed to have seen the missing children. One woman who was watching the fire from the road said she had seen some of them peering out of a passing car while the house burned. Another woman at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said she had served them breakfast the following day and noted the presence of a car with Florida license plates in the rest stop parking lot.
Whose car would it have been?
It's never... So, since the police and stuff aren't really doing anything at this point, they're ruling it death by fire, kids are dead. The Sodders hired a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley from the nearby town of Gawley Bridge to investigate the case. He heard of a rumor around Fayetteville that despite his report to the Sodders that no remains had been found, Morris, the fire chief, had actually found a human heart, which he later put into a metal box and secretly buried on the property. Morris had confessed this to a local minister who confirmed it to George, which I see so many problems with that. I thought if you confess something to a minister, that was supposed to go with them to the grave, but he's talking to a private investigator.
He found a heart, but they didn't find anything else of the body?
Found a heart. Never told anybody. Buried it.
Okay.
So George and Tinsley went to Morris and confronted him with this news, and Morris agreed to show the two where he had buried the metal box, and they dug it up. They did find something inside. They took it to a local funeral director who, after examining it, told them that it was in reality a fresh beef liver and had never been exposed to a fire. So then Morris admitted that the box with the liver had not come from the fire initially. He had placed it there in hope that the Sodders would find it and be satisfied that the missing children had died in the fire. So either he...
Morris was one of the sons, right?
No, Morris is the fire chief.
Okay.
So either, I was torn on this, either he was actually trying to give the family closure in a very weird, convoluted way.
Yeah.
Or he knows what really happened and was trying to throw them off.
But being the fire chief, what... I mean, this might sound heartless, but what's it matter to him if they have closure or not?
Well, one of Jenny's brothers was also a fire.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know. I kept going like this with that one. Like, was he like involved? And because then you throw in the part where they didn't show up for 8 hours.
I mean, I think we could both agree pretty equally that the fire department dropped the ball on that one.
And was it intentional or not? Was the chief involved or not? So,
I think it was definitely intentional, regardless who's at fault for it. I mean, a house fire, that's not acceptable. In 1943, that
did the fire chief not alert the firefighters in time because he knew what was happening and the house had to burn down to make it look like the kids were...
Well, Morris is not an Italian name, but he could have been influenced by Italian. Okay. I'm trying to put this one together to something logical, but I so far have nothing.
So George became obsessed.
As you would expect.
Yes, he wanted to know what happened to his missing children. He saw a girl in a magazine picture of a young ballet dancer in New York City who looked like one of his missing daughters, Betty. He actually drove to New York, went to the girl's school, and demanded to see the girl, but he was refused, which I completely understand.
Understandable.
He wrote a letter to the FBI, to Director J. Edgar Hoover, who basically told him that, well, actually, word for word, J. Edgar Hoover himself actually responded back to him.
Wow.
And his letter said, although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigation jurisdiction of this Bureau. If the local authorities requested the Bureau's assistance, he would, of course, direct agents to assist. But the Fayetteville Police Department and Fire Departments both declined to ask the FBI for help.
I can understand why, I think.
Yeah, because I feel like more people in that town knew what was happening than let on.
It's almost like they put a blanket over them as to why they're not learning anything.
In August of 1949, George persuaded Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, one of the dudes who plays with bones all the time, to supervise a new search through the dirt at the house site. They did a very thorough search. There was actually a picture of it. I'm going to see if I can find it to throw up on the video, but they actually had like the ropes laid out in like foot by foot squares. Yeah.
Did they ever say what happened to the site where the house fire was?
One of the firefighters bulldozed it about a week afterwards.
Before they were able to do it. Okay.
Yeah. So now this guy's digging through the dirt and the debris of the house, not just the debris of the house.
Yeah. Yep. Well, if they bulldozed, they probably just pushed it almost into itself.
So they did a very thorough search. Like I said, they had the grid lines laid out, and they found a dictionary that had belonged to the children and was known to be up in the attic, and some coins were found. They also found several small bone fragments determined to have been human vertebrae. The bone fragments were sent to Marshall T. Newman, a specialist at the Smithsonian Institution. And they were confirmed to be lumbar vertebrae, all from the same person. Now, this is going to be a little scientific, but it's his actual report. It says, since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years old. The top age limit should be about 22, since the centra, which normally fuse at 23, are still unfused. Thus, given this age range, it was not very likely that these bones were from any of the missing children, since the oldest, Maurice, had been 14 at the time. Although this report does allow that vertebrae of a boy his age sometimes were advanced enough to appear to be at the lower end of this range. However, Newman also added the bone showed no sign of exposure to flame. Just let that sink in.
We're going to finish your statement. I have a question, though.
Further, he agreed that it was very strange that those bones were the only ones found, since a wood fire of such a short duration should have left full skeletons of all of the children behind. The report concluded that the vertebrae had, instead, most likely come from the dirt that had been bulldozed over the site.
So I imagine the house didn't take long to burn.
Somewhere inside 6 hours.
So we can agree a house fire is not hot enough to melt a body.
Nope.
It is enough. I mean, if somebody were inside,
it'd kill them.
Cook them.
Yeah, yep.
Now, if the body was intact, would the bones show signs of fire damage?
I would assume at some points, yeah. And I mean, if all you're finding is bone.
But if this was some time after,
I see where you're going. So,
like, if I caught fire, but I stayed intact,
and then laid there for a couple weeks,
bones show fire damage because I was still sealed. Like, my skin blistered, muscle tissue.
I don't know.
Okay.
It depends. I think it would depend on how well done you were.
Well, I'm just thinking the duration of the fire. I mean, a house fire, they can go up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So if the fire quickly burns, collapses into rubble, by the time it simmers out, in some case, it could have burned so quickly that the bodies are just charred, but not actually like cooked. Well, they are cooked, but you're not. Fire isn't
falling
hitting
off the bone cooked.
Yes.
Yeah. That was gross.
Well, there goes ribs for dinner.
I don't know. I'm kind of hungry. So, later Tinsley supposedly confirmed that the bone fragments had come from a cemetery in nearby Mount Hope, but could not explain why they had been taken from there or how they came to be at the fire site. So I feel like this town has a lot of problems. Like, whether they came from New Hope or if the bones were just in the fill dirt, why is there a human vertebrae just laying around that can be used in fill dirt?
Huh.
The Smithsonian returned the bone fragments to George in September of 1949, and their current location is unknown. Because if I were George, I would have been like, these have nothing to do with me. Why do I have these?
Yeah.
So then the West Virginia legislature held 2 hearings on the case in 1950. Now, George was not letting this go. Like, he was constantly at officials.
I don't really blame him either.
Afterwards, Governor Oki L. Patson and State Police Superintendent W.D. Burchett told the Sodders the case was hopeless and closed it at the state level. The FBI then decided it had jurisdiction as a possible interstate kidnapping, but dropped the case after 2 years.
I'm assuming they didn't have any evidence to go off of.
They only had that one woman that said, or the 2 women that said they saw them.
So they didn't have enough reason to continue an investigation.
Nope. With the end of the official efforts to resolve the case, the Sodders printed flyers with pictures of the children, offering a $5,000 and then a $10,000 reward for information that would have settled the case for even one of them.
That was a lot of money then.
Yep. The family's efforts soon brought another reported sighting of the children after the fire. Ida Crutchfield, a woman who ran a Charleston hotel, claimed to have seen the children approximately a week afterwards. Her quote, "I do not remember the exact date. The children had come in around midnight with 2 men and 2 women, all of whom appeared to be, to her, of Italian attraction. When she attempted to speak with the children, one of the men looked at her in a hostile manner. He turned around and began speaking rapidly in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me," she recalled, and then they left the hotel early the next day. Investigators today do not, however, consider her story credible, as she had only first seen photos of the children 2 years after the fire, 5 years before she came forward. So I get that. Like, if
that one seems a little loose.
Yeah. George followed up on leads in person, traveling in the areas from where tips had come. A woman from St. Louis, Missouri, claimed Martha was being held in a convent there. A bar patron in Texas claimed to have overheard 2 other people making incriminating statements about a fire that happened on Christmas Eve in West Virginia some years before, and none of these proved to pan out. When George heard later that a relative of Jenny's in Florida had children that looked similar to his, the relative had to prove the children were his own before George was satisfied. So this guy, he was on a warpath.
I mean, he's going through
Yep.
it. It's admirable what he's doing.
In 1967, he traveled to Houston to investigate another tip. A woman there had written to the family saying that Lewis had revealed his true identity to her one night after having too much to drink. She believed that him and Maurice were both living in Texas somewhere. However, George and his son-in-law, Grover Paxton, could not speak with her. Police there were unable to help them find the 2 men she had indicated, but they denied being the missing son. Oh, they were able to help them find the 2 men. And they denied being the missing sons. Paxton said years later that he doubts about the denial lingered in George's mind for the rest of his life. And this was like before DNA. Shit, I just, like...
Well, this was, 20 years after it happened, 25 years after it happened. Almost, 24 years.
So here's a new twist. You ready for this one? Add a whole nother twist to this thing.
I don't know if we need any more, but yeah, why not? Twist away.
In 1961, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny went to get the mail. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, 1968. Jenny went to their mailbox and found an envelope with her name on it. It was addressed only to her. It was postmarked from Kentucky, but had no return address. Inside, there was a photo of a man in his mid-20s, and on the flip side, a cryptic handwritten note read, Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, LLIL boys dot A90132 or 35. She and George couldn't deny the resemblance of their Lewis, who was 9 at the time of the fire. But beyond the obvious similarities, dark curly hair, brown eyes, they had the same straight nose and the same upward tilt of the left eyebrow. Once again, they hired a private detective and sent him to Kentucky. At which point, he found nothing.
Was he able to follow up
Nope.
anything?
Nope. I actually read that he stopped responding to them shortly after getting to Kentucky. So they paid him. He went to Kentucky, took their money, and ran. Or something happened to him in Kentucky. There was never a follow-up. I actually tried to find that because, like, if he wound up dead or if he just refused to talk to them, I'd feel like, hey, here's some payoff money. I don't live here. Went on, but the surviving Sodder children, joined by their children, continued publicizing the case for many decades after the fire. The theory prevailed that the Sicilian mafia was trying to extort money from George, and the children may have been taken by someone who knew about the planned arson and said they would be safe if they left the house. If the children had survived all those years and were aware that their parents and siblings had survived too, the family believes they may have avoided contact to keep them from harm.
I mean, given the circumstances, yeah.
So what do you think? You think they're alive or you think they died?
I mean, now definitely they're dead.
Well, yeah. I don't think they were ever in the house.
They didn't die in the fire, I know that.
I don't think they were in the house when the fire broke out. I think they were gone before she came downstairs to answer the phone. That's my theory.
Well, I mean, there would have been a record of them after the first phone call. So, yeah, it had to have been before they received the phone call that they went missing.
And I think they only took the younger kids because they knew the older kids would be too hard to control and not brainwash, but convince not to go back to their parents.
And they probably didn't take the youngest because that would have just been a hassle.
Well, and she was sleeping in the bedroom with her mom and dad.
This is true.
I don't think the kids ever went upstairs.
I mean,
I think somebody came in the living room downstairs where they were all still awake and said, let's go.
I mean, I'm pretty convinced that they did not die in the fire.
Mm-hmm. You'd find something.
Yeah, there'd have to be something.
If you're finding a paper dictionary, bones would have survived. And I mean, okay, one kid, maybe he was in an area where the fire was super hot, but 5 of them, you'd find something.
There would have been something.
Yeah, you would find something.
Huh.
So,
yeah, they had to have gone missing. The mother went to bed before the children.
Yep.
And the father was already asleep.
Yep. 2 oldest kids were asleep.
Did they ever mention if the boys went out to do the...
That was not ever mentioned. I had that question also.
Because, like, if somebody was
What
watching
if they went
the
out
house...
to do the chores and the little kids went with... Yeah, but Maurice was asleep. I think they went out and did the chores.
They likely did the chores, and while they were gone... I mean, it would... The only... Make sense if somebody were to wait till the oldest were gone, come in, snatch the children.
Yep. And Maurice just slept through it, in my opinion.
And then by the time the boys came back from their chores, figured that, they already went to bed, and then he just goes about...
Yep. So yeah, I don't think the kids were ever in the house when I don't think the kids were in the house when she got the phone call at 12:30. I think they were already gone.
I very much so doubt so. Because, I mean, 5 kids, even if you did the ladder theory and took them out through the side of the house, I mean, it's 5 times up and down.
Yep.
I mean, although...
But the window was closed and stuff, too. It's not like the window was open.
But
he had to break the window. Yeah, I guess. But
although, if you were to think about it, this is just me spitballing ideas in my head. The noise she hears in the middle of the night, that you think it's the roof, if it's the ladder banging on the side of the house, you might be...
That's...
It could be considered, you might be like, oh, that was the roof.
Yeah. Or that could have been them taking the ladder away from... they drug it down
That ladder could have banged and then...
So bang, drag.
But taking 5 kids out of a window down a ladder...
Yeah, and I feel like one of them would have woke up and started yelling.
If not all of them.
Like, we're not talking infants here. We're talking 12, 14 years old. They know what's right and wrong.
Unless they unfortunately killed them. But why would you go through all of that?
Yeah, and let them die in the house fire. I think they were kidnapped before the fire was set. I think they walked right out the front door.
That's a good one. That's
They knew the older kids would be too much of a hassle, especially the 23-year-old. Like, he's going to fight.
Yeah, why would you?
You're not taking my siblings, like...
Well, that and figure 23 years old, parents are probably like, thank God he's finally gone.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they were gone long before the phone call happened, and somebody took them and brainwashed them into... Or they took them back to Italy.
Or they took them and killed them.
True. But I don't see why you go through all the trouble to do that. I don't know.
I mean, he never gave up either, so it's...
Yeah.
That could have been a reason why to kill him, though, thinking that, he's not going to go quiet about it.
True. Or they could have taken him back to Italy.
And in 1943, it would have been easy to never have contact with them again.
Yep.
That's a crazy one.
Yep. And it has never been solved.
That was a good one.
That case is still sitting right where I just left off today. That's why it's called one of the biggest Christmas mysteries in the America.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'd hold off on that bottom part.
Yeah. All right, so now we got at least one more. Take it, Dave.
All right. We're going to talk about the Fort Worth missing trio. This one, I was looking up different things that happened around Christmas time. And this one was mentioned in a few. I read about it some, and it seemed pretty interesting, so I figured, why not? And I will tell you, I did a lot more work on this one than I did the Lawson family, just because that one was well overdone. But on December 23rd in 1974, 3 young girls went missing in Fort Worth, Texas. Their car was found parked at a Seminary South shopping center, and inside their car was the items that they were purchasing. I believe they were parked by the Sears entrance, which isn't even the oldest girl was Mary Rachel Trelissa, who went by Rachel and was a 17-year-old high school student who had been married for about 6 months at this point. The middle girl was Lisa Renee Wilson, who was a freshman in high school. The youngest was Julie Ann Mosley, a 9-year-old that was given permission by her mother to go along with the other girls. I guess the parents of Rachel and the parents of Julie Ann Mosley were friends. That's why her mother allowed her to go with them.
Yeah, because Rachel was married.
Yes. But Julie's mother knew Rachel's parents. So when they were...
Okay.
I guess she was just kind of hanging around the house.
Oh, yeah, and she stayed with her, didn't she? Like,
yeah. The girls went out to go Christmas shopping, and they were given a curfew of 6 p.m. to return home. And one of the girls actually told them they would be home sooner because they had a Christmas party to go to at 7, and she wanted to get ready for it. After being out later than the parents had allowed, the families went looking for them. They never came back for their curfew. They had found Rachel's car was found in the Sears entrance parking lot, which used to be a really cool store.
And it was in the upper parking lot.
Yeah, it was like
I don't know if that plays into the case or not. I can't find your notes. I'm on mine.
I'm assuming it was like a shopping mall, so they might have had like
a
the
double-decker
two-tier joint. And inside the car, like I said, was the items that the girls had been purchasing. So they had to have gone back to the car at some point. Whether it was to drop off what they had already bought to then go back shopping, or they were already done. The parents stayed with the car all night, hoping that the girls would return, but they never did. The next day, after the girls hadn't returned, the police were called, and the case was assigned to the Fort Worth Missing Persons Bureau. Initial thoughts were the girls had run away. I think that was the Fort Worth Police Department that thought they had run away. Soon after, Rachel's husband, whose name was Thomas, but everybody called him Tommy, had received a letter that had been written by her. The letter said, and this was a direct quote of it, "I know I'm going to catch it, but we had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car is in Sears upper lot. Love, Rachel." The envelope was written in pencil. However, the letter was written by a pen. The paper was also larger than the envelope, so it had to be kind of folded weird to be thrown into the envelope. And it was formally addressed to Thomas rather than Tommy, which everybody who knew him called him. The return address didn't have like an actual return address. It only said Rachel. And you could tell the way it was written, it was spelled incorrectly, and then they kind of like wrote over it to fix it.
I did see that.
Oh, it was in pencil, so they erased it, and then you could see the imprint of what they had written before.
Yeah, and it also says that the mailing zip code was not for Houston.
It was the postage stamp, which is what the post office gives on it before.
And it says that the writing style didn't match the way Rachel wrote. Her tone was inconsistent.
Yes. Well, they looked at the letter and they couldn't determine if it was consistent or not with her actual handwriting.
Gotcha. And I also have written, Rachel would not abandon Julie, and Julie would not voluntarily leave.
Yes. The postage stamp did not have like a city listed, but it had a blurry zip code. And it could have been at either 76083 or 76088. And the reason it could have been both is it was an old hand stamp. So the numbers were manually loaded, and the 3, if it was a 3, it was backwards.
Oh.
So it was either a backwards 3 or a partial 8. The zip code for 76083 is for Eliasville, Texas, about 105 miles away from Fort Worth. And 76088 is Weatherford, Texas, about 30 miles from Fort Worth. Like I said, handwriting experts studied the letter and envelope and weren't going to validate the legitimacy of it. Regardless of the letters, families don't believe it was written by Rachel or that the girls would have left in such a manner. Rachel's mother believes that the girls were abducted. Families had continued their search while the police were investigating by handing out missing persons flyers in their surrounding communities, and even gone as far as contacting national news outlets, which eventually some tips and witnesses had come forward. In 1975, 2 years after, a young man who had known Rachel came forward and stated he saw the 3 girls in the mall and even had a short conversation with Rachel before going on his way. And mind you, this is 2 years after. He stated he wasn't sure, but he thought they were with another person at the mall.
Oh.
But this and the other tips they received didn't bring them any closer to finding the missing girls. Growing impatient with the police's search, the family had hired their own private investigator named John Swaim. In April of 1975, Swaim led a group of 100 volunteers to an area of Port Lavaca, Texas, following a tip. And this Port Lavaca was about 300 miles away from Fort Worth. They didn't go into much detail what the tip had said, but they were searching under bridges and in the areas, and it was suspected that the girls had been killed and taken there. After the search, there weren't any traces of the girls were found. August 1975, Swaim had discovered a 28-year-old man who had worked at a department store that Rachel had applied at. And he discovered that this man was making obscene phone calls to Rachel, among other girls in the area, before the disappearance. He did so by abusing his authority at the store and took the information from their applications to get their phone number to then make phone calls and harass them. 6 women in total were confirmed to have been getting calls from him. And whether this was connected or not, this man also lived in the neighborhood that Rachel's parents were living in, where Rachel had lived before she got married. After Swaim's investigation into him, he was no longer considered a suspect in the missing girls.
Oh, just like that?
Just like, I mean, I don't think it was like that. I think he actually probably followed up with him some, but... A year after the first search that he had in Port Lavaca, a skeleton had been found by an oil drilling crew. Swaim, the private investigator, he had the bones compared to X-rays and dental records of the girls, but they were not a match. I didn't write it, but I think they were a match of like a 15-year-old boy. Oh,
it's amazing. I found a lot of cases where they're looking for a missing person and they find remains of somebody else.
It's just amazing. I mean, we'll get into that on another one, but it's amazing how many bodies people just find while looking for a body.
There's a lot of bodies out there.
I mean, I was driving around yesterday. I was convinced we need a plague again. In March of 1976, a psychic randomly called one of the families and told them to search near an oil well in the community of Rising Star, Texas. No idea why the psychic prompted the call to
Was Rising Star where the oil rig was, where the 15-year-old boy was found?
No.
Oh, I thought maybe she read a story and went, oh, I'm going to be psychic.
Nothing was found. And they still don't know why the tip came to the families in the first place. It was just unusual all in itself. Just to say that psychic is not very good at their job. In 1979... Swaim was found dead of a suspected self-induced drug overdose, which his death was ruled a suicide. And upon his death, he ordered that all of his case files regarding this case to be destroyed.
He was Clinton'd.
I wasn't able to see if it was only this case he had his
or
files.
All his case files.
But they made a mention it was this case in specific.
Wonder what he found out.
But that's what I don't know why he would want his files to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Like technically they're his files, but they're the family's property because they hired him for the job, right?
Yeah. Did they destroy his files?
Yeah, they did. They did follow his wishes. And
just because that was his wishes doesn't mean it has to happen.
He'll never know.
Yeah, what's he going to do?
1981, a witness had come forward saying he saw the girls being forced into a van. The witness approached the man who was trying to force the girls in, and the man told them that this was a family dispute and to stay out of it. For whatever reason, that person waited 8 years to tell anybody. I was going to say,
I love these witnesses that come forward 10 years, 8 years, 6 years later, and they're like, oh, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I hit my head the other day, and I remember.
Yeah.
Spring of 1981, investigators were called to Brazoria County, which was 300 miles away from Fort Worth, after human remains were found in a swampy area. After a month, the investigators were able to conclude the remains did not belong to the missing girls.
So another body.
Another set of another remains that were not involved.
There are so many dead bodies out there just laying around.
I mean, I think we've only made a few episodes. I'm thinking we're already up to like 15 bodies we found laying around.
And the one I have for another episode, there's like 9 bodies just in that case alone.
Yeah, my next one, there's 7 that's connected to it. And then in the thing, they had... I think 11 people that they didn't connect to that case, but they were like, also see. Yeah. I mean, that's what led me to doing another thing. January 2001, case was reopened and assigned to homicide detectives. He believes the girls left the mall with someone they knew and trusted. He was quoted saying, "We could say that they were at one point seen with an individual, but we believe there was more than one involved." In 2018...
I don't know why I'm picturing this guy as like that droopy dog on the cartoons that plays the detective. Can't remember his name. Old cartoons.
I was thinking, you ever see that Parks and Recreation show?
Yeah.
I was thinking Ron Swanson with the big mustache.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that statement alone, there was one person, but there was probably more.
Yeah. We know there was at least one person involved in this.
John Madden of Police Investigation. In 2018, 2 cars were recovered from Benbrook Lake that were thought to have connections with the girls. However, this was never confirmed. I put that in because I thought it was really weird that they involved that with this case, but their car was recovered at the shopping center.
Yeah.
And they, up till now, had no reason to suspect any other vehicle, knowing there had to have been.
Yeah.
But no description or idea of any other vehicle.
I take it the mall had no cameras.
Well, it's 73, probably not.
We had to have a guy up there like...
I was saying, you have a guy like this. Throughout the entire search, families, volunteers, and law enforcement searched along creek beds, back roads, and dusty country trails, and these girls have not been found, and their disappearance remains a mystery and an unsolved case.
Wow. I don't even have theories.
There's not much to go on.
They were abducted. We know that.
But even if they weren't abducted and went missing... Abducted. And he waddled away. But even if they went missing, like... if they just went missing, there's no crime. If they just decided to leave.
I don't know.
But the youngest was 9 years old.
Yeah, what 9-year-old's like, yeah, I'll just leave my family?
Well, I mean, at 9 years old...
like Mickey Mouse.
At 9 years old, you know, they all thought about it at least once.
Well, yeah.
2 hours in, they're like, oh shit, where am I going to get dinner from?
Yeah, that's...
I thought that was interesting, though.
That was interesting. But that's
what do you got?
I think we're going to close it out there because we are well over an hour.
Are we?
Yeah. Even when I edit it, I think we're going to be over an hour. So we're going to close out there. If you have a case you'd like us to look at, shoot us a message on any of our social medias. I know I monitor it almost daily. Dave gets the updates.
Yep.
As long as we can find some sort of information about it, more than happy to do it. Remember to subscribe and like this video and subscribe to our other social media. It'll help us make this channel bigger and better. But for now, we are signing off because Santa's coming. Everybody have a Merry Christmas or a Happy Yule, and we will see you next week.
Santa already came.
No, I'm going to put this out on Christmas Eve.
Santa's coming.
Santa's coming.
Merry Christmas, everyone.